Hello YouTube, Librarian here, back with another very exciting video. Today marks the day that Toontown Preservation Project was launched. This project is a major undertaking by the TTR team in order to preserve as much content from Toontown online as possible. The collection features old design documents, artwork, and tons of official materials released to the public during TTO. I'll be leaving the link to the project down in the description below, and I encourage you to check it out for yourselves. But in this video, I'll be going over some of the early design documents included that show just how different of a game Toontown was going to be, and some content that the TTO team had planned for the game but had to cut. Just a reminder, this video will only scratch the surface of everything this archive has to offer, so I encourage you to check it out for yourselves to learn more. To begin, let's start with the first known design document ever produced for TTO. In this document, the dev team lays out a general vision for what the game would be. Some elements of this document ended up making their way into the final game, such as the sticker book, but others were changed completely. The battles with Cogs were always planned to be similar to how they were in the final game, but originally Cogs would have been able to stun toons and put other kinds of debuffs or status effects on them, which can be countered by other toons in co-op play. This design element wasn't really explained that much, and the only debuff they mentioned was being stunned, so it seems like they didn't really plan it out completely yet. Originally, when toons would go sad, they would be put into a straitjacket and forced to go to a special area in the game called Funny Farms. Getting out of the Funny Farms wouldn't have been a simple task, as you would have had to defeat the bodyguards in the white coats, and would have used up everyone's resources. And they also mentioned that the bodyguards' level and strength would be based on the overall level and strength of everyone in Funny Farms at that time, meaning it would have been sort of like a co-op boss battle. In this stage of development, playgrounds weren't planned yet, with only general zones being planned. Toontown, which would have served as a safe area in each world, the hazard zone, which would have been the streets of the final game, and the suit zone, which was owned by the quote meanies, and would feature a city and other non-toony things like school, which is quite ironic considering the Toontown schoolhouse ended up being in Toontown Central in the final game. Another mechanic that is mentioned but not expanded upon is repainting Toontown. They mentioned that cog buildings would turn toon buildings black and white, like they do in the final game. So this implies that after originally defeating a cog building, there would have been some kind of minigame or quest that would need to be performed in order to bring the building back to its former toony glory. This document also mentions something very interesting, and that is enemy types. Originally, 5 types of enemies were planned, being the VP, the CFO, the CEO, the Weasels, and the Brutos. Now, the VP, CFO, and CEO ended up becoming Sellbots, Cashbots, and Bossbots. But what about the other 2? Well, Bruto is a business term for a salary before taxes, so these might have been some sort of tax collecting cog. As for the Weasels, this could have possibly been a cog based on some kind of shady businessman, or possibly a cartoon weasel itself, as they were often villains in old cartoons. This document also goes into detail on gags. Some of the gags listed here, such as pies or bananas, made their way into the final game, while other gags like kisses, most likely based on the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, or tying the cog shoes together, were cut. Now, I haven't gone over everything in this document, but for the sake of time, I'll be moving on to the next document, which was made by Chuck Ballou. Ballou was brought onto the team to help Toontown have a unique identity. A lot of the ideas that he came up with in this document, such as portable holes or building jokes, became staples in Toontown, while other ideas had to be cut. One idea that was added but was greatly changed from his original vision were toon NPCs. Ballou was adamant that Toontown should only feature classic Disney characters, and not any movie characters unless they are given a special area. He also wanted NPCs of famous Disney characters walking around to interact with players. This feature made it into the final game, but the list of characters was greatly cut down. Originally, he wanted the following characters to all be NPCs in the game: Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Pluto, Goofy, Donald Duck, Daisy Duck, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Scrooge McDuck, Clarabelle Cow, Horace Horsecollar, Pegleg Pete, J. Audubon Woodlore, Baby Herman, and finally Peter and Polly Penguin. He also had a list of about 40 secondary characters who he wanted to appear in signs and dialogue, but not make any physical appearance. Ironically, Chip and Dale were on this list of characters and ended up being some of the few to make the cut in the final game. This document also features the initial idea of COG headquarters. It sounds somewhat similar to the final version, except that it combined the ideas of facilities in the COG headquarters like the factory or the mint with the boss itself, having toons complete some sort of obstacle maze with COG battles and then taking on the big COG itself. Originally, COG headquarters were going to be much harder than they ended up being, only for the most hardcore of fans to participate in, as the rest of the game would have been similar to the difficulty we see in the final version. The reward for taking down a COG HQ would have been access to Pete's Pandemonium Place, where you can battle other victors in a PvP battle, as well as access to the Hall of Fame, which most likely would have been similar to the top toons that we see in the toon headquarters. The document also goes into great detail about playgrounds and how they would be broken up. Originally, they planned to create 14 playgrounds, which does seem like a lot, but since TTO was planned to be supported for years, it makes sense since a lot of these could have been planned for post-launch. I can't go through everything the document says, even though it's very interesting, but the two ideas I wanted to highlight are the fact that Toontown Central was originally going to be 3 separate areas, each with their own loading screen, and was going to house a lot more content than it did in the final version. And that one of the many cut playground ideas was a movie studio that can feature tie-ins with Disney film characters, which is actually an idea I had back in TTO and thought would be a cool addition, so it's nice to see that somebody on the design team actually agreed with me at some point. The final document I want to cover in this video is the latest pre-production document available to us at the moment that gives us the best look at what early Toontown was planned to be. This document is the closest to the final game that we ended up getting, but also features major differences to the final product. Originally, there were going to be 9 gag tracks, with Squirt, Sound, and Drop being the starting tracks. In addition to these 3, the other 6 tracks planned were Practical Jokes, Tune-Up, Lore, Trap, Throw, and Bonus Gags, which wouldn't fit into any other category. In this stage of the game, the 7 gag rule wasn't made yet, which led to many discrepancies among gag numbers. For example, the Lore track only had 3 gags in this version, while Sound had a whopping 10. It's not clear what the practical jokes or bonus tracks would have been, but by the sounds of it, they may have just been normal attacks like Throw and Squirt, so their omission from the final game was probably for the best. This early version for the game actually upped the number of planned playgrounds from 14 to 15, promoting Chip and Dale into full characters. This document also featured a slightly different version of COG encounters, where when running into a COG, a toon would be given 3 options to either fight, ask for help, or run before the battle even begins. COGs would also ignore low-level players if they are in a high-level area, which is something that I think would be a pretty funny addition. In terms of moving closer to TTO, the 4 COG types that we know today were finalized in this version, cutting out the 2 extra types from the previous document and adding in the lawbots. This version also featured an updated funny farm. Instead of being put into a straitjacket, a toon would be pulled off stage by a cane when they go sad. And instead of having to fight the people in the white coats, a sad toon would need to complete a group minigame in order to leave Funny Farm. This seems a lot more in line with the general theme of Toontown, as the original idea for the area was much darker and would not fit in well with the game as it is. Now that's everything I wanted to go over for now, but I've barely scratched the surface on all the information in this archive, so I definitely plan to return in the future to cover more content from these concepts. In the meantime, please check out the archive for yourself in the link I have left in the description below. Also be sure to subscribe for some more Toontastic videos coming soon, and I will see you guys next time.